In this video, I'm going to talk about some of the ways to control the default spacing that happens on your page. Just as when we make some text into a heading 1, we wrap the H1 tags around it, and it gets a default size and a default font. The same thing happens actually with some default spacing in between the different elements. So we're going to learn how to control that. In the reading, it talked about block elements versus inline elements. So the block elements are going to automatically bring something down onto another line. The block elements we've looked at so far have been the headings. Paragraph is also a block element. So if I have some text and I wrap the H1 tags around it, and then I have another block of text and I wrap the H2 tags around it, it's automatically going to bring it down onto another line. We saw the same thing also happening with paragraphs. If I have some text and I wrap the paragraph tags around it, and then some more text and I wrap the paragraph tags around it, it's going to create some space in between and it's going to bring it down onto another line. So that is a block element. So how do we get rid of this default space if we don't want it? And what we're going to do for our practice is we're going to work on our headings and we're going to adjust the margin space. So that's what we're targeting, the margins. This is default margin space that's happening. And quite simply what we'll do is we're going to add a rule which targets our H1 tag in this example, and we're going to say do not have a margin on the bottom. So margin bottom is going to be 0 pixels. So you would think that just not having anything there, leaving that field blank, would be the same as 0, but it's not because the browser has default margins it's going to put in. So I need to neutralize it and make it into 0. And then for the heading we have underneath, we're going to put the margin value of the top to be 0, and that's going to allow them to fall next to each other without a lot of space. And I'm going to look at an example. I'm going to show you an example over here in Dreamweaver. So let's see, I have set up here, I have two versions of this single page, which was my drop cookies page. So in this first one over here, I already have some margins set up. Where it says cookie drops, that is an H1, and where it says a site about everything cookies, that is an H3. So if we look at the example where I copied over all of my HTML, but I didn't copy over my CSS, you can see that default margin space that's happening in between the two. The other margin I want to talk about is the margin on the entire page. So you can notice in the one over here that has styles, and if I scroll up here, you can see all the styles I've already added to this page. There is space between all of the content on my page, so my headings, my links, my regular paragraph text, and my image, and the edge of the page, and that was created by adding a margin to the body. And if I look back over here, you can see that this has what I call upper leftitis. Everything just goes to the upper left side and there's no space. So let's talk about how to change this page, which doesn't have the CSS set up, for it to look like the other one. The only CSS that's set up is from the last video that had the background color. So now what I'd like to do is I'd like to add a rule to the body tag. I'd like to add the margin rule. So I can just stay before my closing curly bracket, so it's added to this. I don't need to write a new rule for the body, and that would be redundant. I'm just going to keep it within the same one. And what I'm targeting is margin, and I get my tool helpers, my code helpers, so I want my margin left. And we do have to start to learn pixels, so a kind of small number is 50, and I have to put px right afterwards for pixels without any spacing. Between 50 and px and a semicolon, and you can already see how all of the content on my page moved over. So my body, the whole background, now it's kind of like it looks like ruled line paper. I've just created that margin that you're used to seeing on line paper, so everything has been shifted over. And I'd also like to do the same for the top. So I'm going to come down a line and go margin and choose top, and I'll put in a 50 pixel 50px semicolon from the top as well. Oops, I forgot I put in the wrong letter. And that's going to move everything down. And I don't need to put my closing curly bracket because it's already there. And let's save this page and preview it in the browser. I'll go to my little world icon and choose preview in Firefox. And now we can see the margin that was created here. So that's a lot better than having my upper leftitis. And you could adjust those numbers if you want the margin to be more. On the left-hand side, I could certainly see this going over 75 pixels, 100, you could adjust the top as well. So now what we need to adjust is I'd like this subheading to really be right underneath cookie drops. So let's go back over here and I need to target my H1 tag. So right after body, I'm going to type in H1, open curly bracket, and come down a line and type in margin, and I want to target the bottom. I want the bottom of this to have 0 px, semicolon, closing curly bracket. And then the next one I want to target, because this is an H3, if I'm just not sure, I can check here in my body. I mark this up as an H3, so I'm going to target that one, H3, and I want that one to have the margin top, and put that one at 0 px as well, and bring that down a line and closing curly bracket. And so now I've reduced that space that's in between. Okay, so this is what I'd like you to practice for your own homework assignment. And the next thing we'll do is we'll talk about how to start changing and adding different fonts onto the page.